Hi, I am Jhonna. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to share something that I have been thinking about for a long time. It is not easy to talk about, but this channel has always been about honesty, and if I am going to call it unfiltered, then I need to actually mean that. I want to talk about high-functioning anxiety, and I want to connect it to what it feels like to be an INFJ carrying that weight in silence, while appearing to have everything under control. Before I get into it, the usual reminder. I am not a mental health professional. I am not a therapist or a psychologist. I am someone who has lived through a great deal, who researches and reflects, and who shares what she learns here as honestly as she can within the boundaries that keep this space safe. This channel is a learning diary, and this particular entry is one of the more personal ones I have shared. Let me start with what high-functioning anxiety actually means. High-functioning anxiety is not a formal clinical diagnosis. You will not find it listed as its own category in a psychology manual, but it is a very real and very widely recognized pattern. It describes someone who experiences significant, constant internal anxiety, but who manages to perform well in daily life despite it. From the outside, they look competent, organized, responsible, even calm. From the inside, they are running a constant mental loop of worry, preparation, self-evaluation, and dread. The performance is real. The suffering underneath it is also real. And the problem is that when you look capable, nobody around you tends to ask if you're okay. Because from where they are standing, you clearly are. For people who identify as INFJ, this pattern has some specific roots that are worth understanding. One of the four letters in INFJ is the J, which stands for judging. And before anyone misunderstands, judging in this context does not mean being judgmental toward other people. It refers to a preference for structure, planning, and closure. People with the J preference tend to feel more comfortable when things are organized, when there is a plan, when loose ends are tied up. Uncertainty and open-ended situations create friction for them. And when the external world is chaotic or unpredictable, the J part of the personality works very hard internally to create a sense of order and control, even if that order exists only inside their own mind. Now pair that with the deeply empathetic, deeply feeling nature of the INFJ, and what you get is someone who not only feels things very intensely, but who also feels a strong pull to manage those feelings, to contain them, to appear functional even when internal experience is anything but calm. That combination, deep feeling plus the need for order and control, can create a specific kind of pressure that builds quietly over years. The anxiety does not look like panic. It looks like over-preparation. It looks like triple-checking everything. It looks like lying awake running through scenarios. It looks like setting impossibly high standards and then quietly hating yourself when you do not meet them. It looks like performing perfectly at work or in class while barely being able to breathe on the inside. I know this pattern from the inside. I want to share some of my story here because I think it gives context to everything I am about to say. I will share what I can, keeping it general enough to stay safe, but honest enough to be real. I grew up in a household that was not stable. My father struggled with addiction and alcohol for most of his life. My mother had her own patterns that made her very difficult to reach, particularly in moments where a child needed genuine support. Violence was something I was exposed to early. And yet, despite all of that, I was an honor student. I moved between 4 different elementary schools, and I still managed to earn academic recognition in most of them. I had leadership roles. I represented my school in competitions. I gave speeches. I received awards. From the outside, I looked like a capable, high-achieving student. From the inside, I was holding on. I was surviving. And the academic performance was, looking back, partly a response to the environment. If I could just be good enough at school, if I could just meet the standard, maybe things would be okay. Maybe there would be less tension. Maybe I would feel less like something was about to fall apart. My father had very high expectations of me, even given how chaotic our home life was. And when I did not meet those expectations in a visible way, the response was humiliation, not understanding. So the perfectionism was not something I chose. It was something I learned was necessary. Be excellent or face the consequences. And because I was already wired to feel things deeply and to process everything internally, I internalized that lesson completely. The bar was always impossibly high. And I was always reaching for it, even when every other part of my life was crumbling. When I moved to high school, I attended 3 different schools. I changed religion during those years, which created significant tension at home. I was navigating a relationship that I now recognize was not healthy, with a man who was much older than me. I was trying to be present at school while managing things at home that most teenagers should never have to deal with. And I still showed up. I still tried. I still competed, still represented, still led when asked, even when I was nowhere near okay inside. At one point, in one of the schools I attended, I was placed in the lowest section because of a gap in my enrollment. And my classmates chose me as class president. When my class advisor went on maternity leave shortly after, I essentially had to manage the class on my own. These were students who were already involved in substance abuse. The environment was difficult in ways that felt unfair for someone my age to have to navigate. But I did it. Because I had learned, through years of conditioning, that the only acceptable response to difficulty was to perform your way through it. When I eventually started working, I brought that same pattern with me. In the call center industry, I was consistently one of the top agents. I received perfect or near-perfect scores on quality evaluations. I won awards. I handled customers across multiple countries, managing voice calls, emails, and everything in between. I did this while supporting family members financially, while carrying unresolved personal pain, while managing a physical body that was already starting to show signs of the strain it was under. I never said I was struggling, because struggling was not an option. Or at least that is what the pattern in my head had decided. High-functioning anxiety works this way. It convinces you that the performance is the requirement for staying safe. That if you stop performing, if you let the cracks show, something much worse will happen. And so you keep going. You keep reaching. You keep maintaining the surface, even as the inside becomes increasingly difficult to manage. One of the defining features of high-functioning anxiety in INFJs is the internal critic. This is the voice that evaluates every interaction, every decision, every outcome, and finds it insufficient. I could win awards and not feel them. I could be praised by supervisors and colleagues and feel nothing but a quiet suspicion that the praise was wrong or temporary, or that it would be taken away the moment someone saw the real picture. No amount of external validation reached deep enough to quiet the internal standard, because the internal standard was not based on logic. It was based on fear. And fear does not respond to certificates. I want to talk about what this actually looks like in daily life because I think it helps to be specific. High-functioning anxiety does not always look like trembling hands or racing thoughts, though it can include those things. More often, it looks like this. You are constantly preparing. You are always thinking 3 steps ahead. You rehearse conversations before they happen and replay them after they are over. You feel a low-level sense of unease even when nothing is technically wrong. You have difficulty relaxing because relaxing feels like letting your guard down, and you have learned that letting your guard down can have consequences. You overcommit because saying no feels dangerous. You apologize frequently, even when you have done nothing wrong. You feel responsible for things that are not yours to carry. And when something goes wrong, even something small, the internal response is completely disproportionate because your nervous system has been treating everything as high stakes for so long that it no longer knows how to categorize minor inconveniences as minor. For INFJs, this is compounded by the empathy. Because you are not just managing your own anxiety. You are also absorbing the emotional states of people around you. Every tense moment in a household, every unspoken frustration in a workplace, every difficult student in a class lands on you. And you carry it, often without identifying it as separate from yourself. There is also something specific about the J preference that makes this harder to recognize. Because the J tendency toward organization and planning can look, from the outside, like someone who has everything together. The person with high-functioning anxiety is often incredibly capable. They follow through. They meet deadlines. They handle crises efficiently. They seem like the person others can rely on. And sometimes that appearance becomes part of the trap. Because being the capable one, the reliable one, the person who handles things, means nobody thinks to ask how you are actually doing. And you get so used to being that person that you stop asking yourself. I eventually reached a point where I could not continue the way I had been. It was not a single event. It was the accumulation of years of performing through pain, supporting others through my own depletion, living in an environment that had become genuinely unsafe, and carrying a weight that had never been equally shared or even acknowledged. My body had been giving signals for a long time through physical health problems that started appearing in my 20s, blood pressure, blood sugar issues, creatinine levels that should not have been that high for someone so young. I pushed through anyway, because stopping was not something I knew how to do. Eventually, I had to leave. I had to remove myself from the environment that was accelerating everything. And I had to start very slowly figuring out what my life looked like when I was not performing it for anyone else. That process is not complete. I am still in it, but this channel is part of it. Because for the first time in a very long time, I am choosing to share what is actually happening rather than a polished version of it. I am learning to tolerate the discomfort of not being perfect at this. Not having the best editing, not having the most structured content, not being certain about everything I say. And I am learning that the value of sharing something honest is not diminished by the fact that it is imperfect. That is a hard lesson for someone whose nervous system spent decades equating imperfection with danger. I also want to say something directly to anyone who recognizes themselves in what I have described. If you are the person who appears to have everything together, who performs well at work or school, who handles responsibilities efficiently, but who has a constant quiet hum of worry running underneath all of it, you are not broken. You are not faking it in either direction. The performance is real, and so is the anxiety. Both things are true at the same time. And the fact that you have managed to function despite the internal pressure you have been carrying is not something to be dismissed. It is genuinely remarkable. But it is also not sustainable indefinitely. And the goal is not to perform better. The goal is to eventually reach a place where you do not need to perform at all. Where showing up as exactly who you are, with a full complicated human picture of that, feels safe enough to try. I am working toward that. Some days it feels closer than others. For now, the most honest thing I can say is this. Knowing that the pattern exists is the beginning. Naming it, understanding where it came from, recognizing that it was a response to something real rather than a flaw in your character, that matters. It does not fix everything immediately, but it gives you somewhere to start. Before I close today, I want to ask you something. If you have experienced high-functioning anxiety, or if you recognize any part of this pattern in yourself, what has helped you the most in noticing it or in managing it? Even something very small. I would genuinely love to read your responses in the comments, because I think hearing from real people who are navigating real versions of this is more valuable than any research summary I could share. Your experience matters here. Thanks for watching. If this video resonated with you, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I want to be upfront and share that I use this text-to-speech voice to tell my stories because, as a full-time ESL teacher, I have to be very careful with my vocal cords. Managing vocal nodules means I have to save my voice for my students, but I didn't want that to stop me from sharing these unfiltered thoughts with you. I'm Jhonna, and I'm currently working toward my goal of 1,000 subscribers, so I can finally monetize this channel and turn this passion into a sustainable part of my future. This is my diary of solo living here in the Philippines, and your support, whether through a comment or a sub, helps me keep this channel growing. If you would like to help out even more, you can check out the Buy a Treat for My Pets link in the description. My dogs definitely appreciate the love. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next update. Thank you for being such an important part of this journey. I'm Jhonna, and I will see you in the next one.